The P.
Bothering Mikey Garcia because he's putting up that left hand trying to block it, but he can't block it. When he's trying to block it, you know, Earl Spencer's coming in with that left.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Chantel Cameron had this to say. She said, Katie Taylor won't take the risk and fight me. In the article, it talks about how Chantel's feeling now that she's made the move over to MTK Global after experiencing some promotional issues with Cyclone Promotions, that she is very much enjoying training with Jamie Moore, and she talked about, you know, some things that may be occurring in the near future, that if she can't get a Taylor fight, a move to the 140-pound division is conceivable, and she aims to become a world champion there. Now, I can imagine that anybody who's followed the career of Katie Taylor as both an amateur and a professional isn't going to take too kindly to these comments from Chantel Cameron, because what Chantel is implying is that Katie is ducking her, when Chantel hasn't done enough to establish herself as a credible threat, to establish herself as a blip on Katie Taylor's radar.
Not yet.
So the idea that she'd be ducking you when to her, you don't have anything to offer, well, it's gonna seem kind of hollow to people. You know, I can imagine how people are reacting to those comments from Chantel Cameron. But I'll start off by saying this. Chantel Cameron is a young, up-and-coming fighter, and she's doing what young, up-and-coming fighters do. She's talking herself up, she's letting her name be known, what her intentions are, and how she means to fight the big fish. In that way, I don't fault her for that, even if I disagree with what she's saying, and I do. I don't think Katie Taylor would avoid fighting Chantel Cameron or anybody else.
Nope.
For a minute.
No, sir.
I don't agree with what Chantel Cameron is saying. However, I understand where it's coming from. She's a young, up-and-coming fighter. That's what young, up-and-coming fighters do. It's not dissimilar from what we see with Teofimo Lopez and Vasil Lomachenko. Teofimo Lopez is a young, up-and-coming fighter. He's garnering some very exhilarating knockouts, making a name for himself fight by fight. And his talk of Vasil Lomachenko is no different than Chantel's talk of Katie Taylor. That's just a trick of the trade. That's an occupational hazard. That's what young, up-and-coming fighters do when there's a big fish in the pond.
An occupational hazard.
So I don't fault her for saying what she's saying. I just don't agree with it. And I'll tell you the truth. The only time that these kinds of call-outs chat my ass as a boxing fan is when I don't think there's anything behind them. When
it's hollow.
It appears that one fighter is clout chasing by constantly name dropping another fighter with no actual intention of fighting them. Whereas with Chantel, I don't doubt that Chantel wants a Katie Taylor fight, just as much as I don't doubt that Katie would give her that fight.
She would.
Essentially, I don't think it's a hollow call-out from Chantel Cameron. I don't think it's hollow in all the ways that, you know, Lara's call-outs to Gennady Golovkin were hollow. But what made them hollow? What characterizes a hollow call-out? Well, you constantly say this guy's name. You've been saying this guy's name for 2-3 years, but you never actually went up there to fight that guy. When in all those years that you kept name-dropping this guy to the media, you could have simply went up there to middleweight, became a mandatory for one of his belts, you know, preferably the IBF, because that is a guarantee that you will get that fight. If you can secure a mandatory position via the IBF, it's only a matter of time before you get the fight that you want. But Lara never did that, making all those call-outs about his hollow.
Is a wet wall in the bathroom?
Is a plastic Dixie cup. The same is true in regards to Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder, who
name dropped Joshua,
took every opportunity to talk to the media
about Joshua,
telling them things about Anthony Joshua like, don't wait, make the date. Only for you to spend the better portion of 2018 rejecting offers from Anthony Joshua's team to fight. I mean, how bad do you want that fight when from 2018 going into 2019, all you've actually done is reject offers? In that way, those call-outs from Wilder, those call-outs from Lara, they're hollow. Now, I don't think that's the case when it comes to Chantel Cameron. I don't think that she's just using Katie Taylor's name to advance herself or to promote herself. I don't think it's that simple. I think if that fight were really on the table for Chantel, she'd take that fight. The issue is that Katie's got bigger fish to fry. And for Chantel, what that means is you've no choice but to play the waiting game. You've no choice but to play the waiting game if what you want is a Katie Taylor fight. But why? Why the waiting game?
Pay attention.
Well,
unifications.
Katie Taylor's got bigger fish to fry. It's conceivable that she could be fighting Delphine Persoon in what is a lightweight, undisputed title fight. In her very next fight, it's conceivable that she could be taking on the longest reigning champion in the lightweight division and the most accomplished of any of the champions that have been there in recent memory. That's a bigger fish than Chantel Cameron, so she'd have to take a back seat to that. But after that, assuming that Katie beats Delphine Persoon and unifies all the belts, it doesn't stop there, because an Amanda Serrano fight could come thereafter. Amanda Serrano, who signed a 3-fight deal that caps off with a Katie Taylor fight, and she's 1 fight in to that 3-fight deal. So for Chantel Cameron, you don't rank very high on Katie Taylor's totem pole. So if you do want that fight, you'd have to wait regardless.
It's not next or after
Now
next.
think about it this way. If you're Chantel Cameron and you want a Katie Taylor fight, but you know you're not really close to that fight yet, there are a lot of things that may come before that because you don't really have anything to offer. What do you do?
I don't know.
I'll tell you what you do. What Chantel Cameron is saying she's going to do.
What?
Go up to the 140-pound division, see about fighting for a world title, become a world champion there. That way you have that to bring to the table when it comes to Katie Taylor. Use your heads, kids. If Chantel Cameron wants a Katie Taylor fight, but she knows that she's going to end up waiting anyway for that fight, well, if you're going to end up waiting anyway, you might as well pick up a world title in the process. The problem is, there are no world titles for Chantel Cameron to win in the lightweight division because those 2 champions, there are only 2 champions there. And all those world titles, they're tied up between them. They're about to fight each other. So if you're Chantel, you know you're going to end up waiting anyway, you might as well move up and procure a world title of your own. But why move up? Why? Well, it's conceivable that once Katie Taylor unifies all the belts in the lightweight division, she's going to move up. It's only a matter of time. In which case, if you're Chantel Cameron and you know that you're going to end up waiting anyway, why not become a champion while you wait?
Makes sense.
And let me tell you something about moving up to the 140-pound division. You don't go up to 140 if smoke is what you're avoiding. You don't go up to the 140-pound division to get away from the smoke. You go up there to dive into the fire. Because in that division, you have Jessica McCaskill, who to date
WBC
gave
champion.
Katie Taylor the hardest fight of her professional career. She just so happens to be the WBC champion. You also have Cristina Linardatu, who very recently became the WBO champion of the 140-pound division. There are dangerous people up there to fight. You don't go to 140 to get away from the smoke. You go up there to dive into the fire. Because as soon as you pick up a world title there, it's only a matter of time before those 2 dangerous champions start calling you out. It was only days after Cristina Linardatu won her WBO title that she put the other champions in the weight class on notice via Instagram. So what I see here with Chantel Cameron's plan, her team, what they have laid out for her, it's a solid plan. It's a plan that makes sense. And on the surface of
They look a certain way.
it might look a certain way, but if you look a little deeper and you analyze just how things might break down, the plan itself makes perfect sense. Why sit around waiting at lightweight for a Katie Taylor fight that, a fight that could be 2 to 3 fights from now, maybe more? Why sit around doing that when you can simply pick up a world title in the process and incentivize yourself for her? Why approach the fight as a challenger when you can approach the fight as a champion? Lord knows, you're going to be waiting a while for that fight anyway. And if you're going to wait anyway, then picking up a world title while you wait, that makes perfect sense. Now, if you look at the world champions in the 140-pound division, you'll notice that 3 of the 4 champions in that weight class just so happen to be people that Katie Taylor beat already. So put your thinking cap on. What better way for Chantel Cameron to build the hype around a Katie Taylor fight? What better way is there than to square off against some of her common opponents so that people can discuss and cross-compare performances between the 2?
While she waits.
It's a tried and true method to build a fight, and in this instance, those common opponents just so happen to be world champions, so you'd be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You could have Chantel fight for world titles while at the same time building the Katie Taylor fight by challenging common opponents. It's a perfect plan. It's a near perfect plan. And that's why I said I'm not mad that Chantel Cameron said what she said. Even though I disagree with it, I'm not mad. And the plan that they have laid out for her is a near perfect plan. Because it won't just result in a Katie Taylor fight somewhere down the line. It also could result in some sizzling matchups for Chantel Cameron. Imagine Cameron versus McCaskill, or Cameron versus Linardatu, All those fights would be high-octane firefights, action fights, and fights that would test Chantel Cameron's mettle so that she can establish herself as either one of the best in show or just short of the mark. I'll tell you, I like the plan. So, in closing, I know that some people might have heard these comments from Chantel Cameron and didn't like what they heard, but at the same time, do realize she's a young up-and-comer. This is the Hurt business, and that's the attitude that she's supposed to have. And as far as her moving up, that makes perfect sense. For right now, that makes perfect sense. In other news, Amir Khan was recently quoted as saying, "If I beat Terrence Crawford, that probably kills the Brook fight." The article reads, "If I beat Crawford, and I firmly believe I can, that probably kills the Brook fight. If Crawford does beat me, the fight with Kel could still happen. No matter what he says, I've never been against it.
Sure.
I know I beat him easily, but the timing has to be right for me. Then I would take it if it made financial sense. We are prize fighters and will not be ripped off. There's no point to it unless I get exactly what I'm worth," Khan told Daily Mail. Brook pushed hard last year to finalize a fight with Khan. Khan was quoted as saying, "There isn't much difference in the money," says Khan, "but there is so much more to gain for my legacy from the Crawford fight. It's in the garden." It's the first pay-per-view fight on ESPN television in America for 20 years. It's huge. And this denotes more of the same kind of talk from Amir Khan, doing his best to distance himself from a Kel Brook fight, no matter what the eventuality. I mean, think about how ridiculous what he's saying is. That if you beat Terrence Crawford, if you pull this massive upset,
Yeah.
that kills the Brook fight.
How?
If anything, it keeps it alive, because I don't imagine you'd walk directly into a Brook fight if Crawford beats you, if Crawford flattens you the way everybody's expecting him to flatten you. I don't imagine that you could go from losing to Terrence Crawford, or you would go from losing to Terrence Crawford right into a Brook fight. If anything, Khan's got it backwards. Why on earth would beating Terrence Crawford kill the Brook fight? That doesn't make any sense at all. The only way that makes sense is if this is yet another chapter in the same book of Amir Khan doing whatever he's got to do to circumvent a Kel Brook fight. Many people have varying opinions as to why Amir Khan has seemed so opposed to that fight in particular for years. It's not like Amir Khan's never taken any risks. We all know he has.
I remember the Canelo
It's not
fight.
like Amir Khan has never fought anybody that wasn't good. You know, he's fought good fighters, so it can't be that either. What is it about a Kel Brook fight that he is so opposed to? Because if you ask around, most people will tell you that is a fight that Amir Khan doesn't want. For one reason or another, he just doesn't want to have that fight. I'm of the opinion that the reason we see Khan year after year putting that fight off, putting it on the back burner, the reason that he doesn't want to have that fight is because there is simply too much on the line in terms of bragging rights, in terms of egos, that his contempt of Kel Brook is so great that he won't even give him the satisfaction of having a fight. And this is just another chapter in that same book. Do you guys realize that the 3-fight deal that Amir Khan signed with Matchroom, that 3-fight deal that most people thought would bring the Kel Brook fight into fruition, that deal is over a year old? That's a deal that Amir Khan signed back in January of last year. We're 3 months into 2019. He signed that deal January 2018. We're 3 months into 2019 with no indication that Amir Khan has any real intent to fight Kel Brook. And this fight has been a fight that's been talked about for years. Yet Amir Khan continues to put roadblocks and obstacles and alternate scenarios ahead of that fight. It's not a fight that he wants. And I think that at this point in the juncture, it's crystal clear.
He never wanted that fight.
There's no debate. There's no argument. This is not a fight that Amir Khan wants. And this is just his latest harebrained excuse not to have it. And in other news, some very funny quotes from Mr. Bob Arum of Top Rank /ESPN. He said, "The Lomachenko-Crolla fight got shoved up our ass." And in the article, it talks about the hiccup that Vasyl Lomachenko suffered after newly crowned IBF champion Richard Kamei suffered a hand injury. You know, he had a fight with Isa Chanyev for what was the vacant IBF title, the title that Mikey vacated and left there for Kamei and Chanyev to fight for. Kamei won the fight, but Kamei got injured. So that put a Lomachenko unification fight on hold, in which case that opened the door for the WBA to order Vasyl Lomachenko versus Anthony Crolla. Anthony Crolla being the mandatory challenger to Vasyl Lomachenko's WBA title. And Bob talks about how, Eddie, it seems like Eddie Hearn,
Crolla's promoter,
had aspirations of having Vasyl Lomachenko fight on DAZN. That he wanted the thing to go to a purse bid. He was going to try to get that fight streamed on DAZN. And as a result of that, the people over there at Top Rank and ESPN ended up overpaying Anthony Crolla to make sure that that fight stays on the ESPN side of the street. And that Mr. Bob Arum, and I quote, stated that would be the start of a war they couldn't win. A war, essentially, against DAZN and ESPN. So, ladies and gentlemen, we see how the fight ended up on the ESPN side of the street. And all this denotes is the competitive market that I've been telling you guys about in video after video, that DAZN debuting in the American market has made things that much more competitive in the process. And, you know, it seems like Anthony Crolla has reaped the benefits of that competitive market, because now he's being overpaid by Top Rank, by ESPN, to make sure that it doesn't go to a purse bid, or at least to have made sure that it didn't go to a purse bid, and that the fight would stay on ESPN. These are the byproducts of what is a competitive market. Now, this matchup is in no way intriguing enough for this much back and forth.
It's not.
I mean, it's a necessary evil for Vasyl Lomachenko. You don't want to have to give up your title to avoid facing a guy you know you can easily beat. It's understandable why he's having that fight, in spite of it not being a very intriguing fight. But because the market is so competitive now, a run-of-the-mill basic fight like this is enough to get two separate outfits at each other's throats. Because this run-of-the-mill fight, you know, it's Anthony Crolla. Nothing against the guy, God bless him. But this is not a high-profile fight by any stretch of the imagination. But because things are so competitive now, everything, you know, everything is a turf war. Everything's a pissing contest. And as I stated before, a competitive market, like the way the market is today, it's actually beneficial to everybody. It's beneficial to the fans, but it's also beneficial to the fighters, because that much more money ends up being poured into boxing. And Anthony Crolla being overpaid to keep that fight on ESPN. That's the kind of shit that I was talking about, ladies and germs. And that the market being this competitive only comes at a consequence to the different outfits, the different game in town, the different promoters. That to them, yeah, maybe it's a pain in the ass, because now you have to work twice as hard to keep up with the Joneses. But as far as everybody else, the fans, the fighters, they reap the benefit of that. That fight's going down this Friday. I think Vasyl Lomachenko should be able to handle Anthony Crolla quite easily. I think that he's fulfilling his obligations as a champion. You know, when you hold world titles, mandatories are a part of that, and this is all just a part of the process. So I don't even fault him for it, because at the end of the day, this wasn't the plan. The plan was to have a unification fight with the winner of Comey versus Chanyev. Winner was Comey. Comey got injured. Here we are, you know. Nothing to really complain about, just a fun tidbit, you know. This is how competitive things have become, to the point where a fighter like Anthony Crolla is being overpaid.